She serves as Associate Professor and Chair of Christian Education at Defiance College in Ohio. She also offered Faith Formation in Vital Congregations, a very good book. And we have that available in the Resource Center. Her book was used by the staff of First Congregational UCC in Colorado Springs as they restructured their Sunday mornings, which you can learn all about at a workshop later this morning. And one reason we are so pleased to have her with us is because she believes and says, as we quoted in our brochure, "For me, all of ministry, preaching and worship, pastoral care and outreach, service and mission, education and fellowship, evangelism and justice, all of it is the fertile field of formation in the Christian faith and practices." Please welcome Marian Plant.
Good morning. Oh, it says I'm alive up here. Good. Oh. I'll share live. I got enough coffee in me. Give us a moment. We need to put our technology in place here. I don't use a lot of it, but what little I do use needs a little bit of assistance. So while Jeff gets things set up and tests to see if we've got everything that was primed on the computer, if it's still primed or if it's gone into hibernation, I'm going to give a commercial message.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm from Defiance College in more ways than one. Defiance College is one of your United Church of Christ related colleges, so if you want someone who's out here to get an experience of what Northwest Ohio is, and if you're in the flat part of Colorado, you'll feel very comfortable. And if you're in the rocky part of Colorado, well, it's a little different. Send them to us. We're great. We have quite a few different majors. We're a small school. We offer about, 45, something like that. Some of them right out on the cutting edge, digital forensic science, one of the few that's actually offered at the undergraduate level in the country. We have a nursing program now that works in affiliation with 8 hospitals and at least 2 other community colleges in the preparation of nurses who can complete a bachelor's degree with us. And then we have the rock-solid, anciently rooted courses and practices like religious studies and ministry studies. You know, the ones that really hold all of us together when the time's needed. That's the group that I play with all the time. I'm in the ministry study half of the program, and my colleague Dean Johnson is in the religious studies half. That's the big team, the 2 of us. So send your kids, send your young adults, come and take a look at us. We're very friendly. We take good care of young people who come from out of state. When I said that I am connected to Defiance College in more ways than one, I met it. I graduated from there 150 years ago, so my roots are still there. God works in mysterious ways and doesn't always clue people in on this. Have you noticed? Okay, so I graduated in the spring of 1973, 150 years ago. And exactly 30 years later, I was sitting at my first commencement as the professor in the department out of which I had graduated and watching the class go across the dais. Now, if that isn't a 30-year plan with God behind it, I don't know what is, because I had no intention of going back. The other commercial message, how are we doing? Is everything I need? Okay. Yeah, I may have competition with pictures. The only other thing that I want to mention is that we have a Design for Leadership program. And the Design for Leadership program is distance learning, totally online in Christian education and church leadership. It's absolutely created for folks who are already out in the field and haven't had formal background like academic work and want to do that in Christian education and also in church leadership. So I'm always trying to get the word out because you don't have to move from any place in order to do this, and the instructors are all experts, practitioners. who take on courses that they are really, really well tuned into in order to do. So those are my commercial messages. You all lost your chance to go to the bathroom because you stayed and listened. So here we're going to get going. I will confess that my background and my experiences tend to be in white, middle-class settings. That's kind of where my brain has functioned all of these years. Fortunately, I have had a lot of colleagues who come from other settings, and so I gain from them across the years. But that's just to let you know that when I'm making suppositions or giving you discernments, that's the filter out of which most of them come. I give them to you to test out in your own reality and see if they're of any help at all. All right, here we go. Ever since the planning team unveiled this theme of energizing the strings of faith for this particular event, I have been living with things that have crawled into my head and refused to go away. And the first one was the Isaiah 35 passage. There's 10 verses in this chapter, and I'm going to read them to you. I mean, they've been rounding around in my head. You are welcome to them. The wilderness and the dry land shall be glad. The desert shall rejoice and blossom. Like the crocus, it shall blossom abundantly and rejoice with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given to it, the majesty of Carmel and Sharon. They shall see the glory of the Lord, the majesty of our God. Strengthen the weak hands and make firm the feeble knees. Say to those who are of a fearful heart, be strong, do not fear. Here is your God. He will come with vengeance, with terrible recompense. He will come and save you. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then the lame shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the speechless sing to joy. For waters shall break forth in the wilderness, and streams in the desert. The burning sand shall become a pool, and the thirsty ground springs of water. The haunts of jackals shall become a swamp, and grass shall become reeds and rushes. A highway shall be there, and it shall be called the Holy Way. The unclean shall not even pass it by, but it shall be for them. And no traveler, not even fools, shall go astray. No lion shall be there, nor shall any ravenous beast come up on it. They shall not be found there, but the redeemed shall walk there. And the ransomed of the Lord shall return and come to Zion with singing. Everlasting joy shall be upon their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. Isaiah's waters in the desert call to me the images that are so unfamiliar to Marian of the Midwest and yet so vivid in the Bible, sort of perch at the edge of my imagination like a two-dimensional picture that's hung off on a side wall. I think of congregations on the edge. And I wonder, what meaning do Isaiah's waters in the deserts have for them? And I wonder what meaning they could have. So that's the first piece that took up residency in my head. And then one Saturday afternoon, several months ago, I made the mistake of walking into the TV room where my husband was enjoying a Saturday afternoon communion with the lazy boy. And I sat down because a nature program was on, and so I wanted to take a little break, and I sat down, and I got lost, pulled into this particular program. And another whole set of images takes up residence in my head and now is daring me to make them go away, and I have had no success whatsoever. These were images of the Okavango Delta in the Kalahari Desert of Botswana, Africa. Anybody been there? I am so ready to go, but not during the dry season. I'm going to do a little description verbally, and then if we can get a couple of the clips to work, you'll get to see some of the images. All right? So here's what I'm seeing on the big screen TV. Arid, nearly waterless land. Desert sand that looks a lot more like dirt than our regular golden type sand. And it blows along dry riverbeds and the sun-scorched land. You can feel the heat through the TV. The plants and the grasses are gone, or they've dried and just fallen over, and that dust is collecting along the stems. Elephants, hippos, antelope, zebra, giraffes, all of them are thirsting after what little moisture there is in the ground, held in what totally look like exhausted stream bottoms and these really shallow pools. In one of the pools, there are catfish struggling for life, and the pools have shrunk to almost nothing. And there they are, like this, in thickening mud. All right, let's see if we can play that first DVD segment there. Don't worry if you can't hear the narration. Just watch the image.
also holds vast grasslands and immense salt pans as gently as the moon. It's a land of rivulets. Tracks hint at huge herds. But where are they now? In hiding places and havens both near and far, each one waits for its own summons. Complex set of conditions. And in years when all the right elements come together, we produce an explosion of life. Into Botswana's Kalahari sands runs a great river, the Okavango, creating a lush paradise 1,000 miles from the sea. Beyond it lies the bed of an ancient lake, once the largest in Africa. Now all that is left is its immense footprint, known as the Makadakadi salt pans. Zebra and wildebeest are born to the Kalahari's relentless cycles of dry and wet, scarcity and plenty. Yet they're limited as they reach.
Last rains have left the Boteti riverbed mostly dry. The spillway of the Okavango River, it has not flowed for 20 years. Even so, it remains a lifeline to a population on the brink. Wildebeest plunging down a riverbank are not greeted by a rushing deluge or eager crocodiles. Just more sand. Nevertheless, thousands of animals that depend on surface water for survival must trek to the Boteti during the dry season to drink from its dwindling seepage pools. Crocodiles originally came down with the river from the north decades ago. Now, stranded in a dry land, they have held on and even bred in small mud pools and riverbank caves. Months after the last rains fell, some animals devise ingenious strategies to find clean water in the dry riverbed. Zebras scrape away the sand until fresh water seeps through. Hundreds of sandgrass take.
You get the idea. Whoops. Anybody ready for a drink? You get the idea. So, just as it was getting pretty deadly there watching all this stuff, and it just goes from bad to worse. Jeff, the next one we're going to need in just a moment is that Okavango heartbeat. I'll give you the signal. So I'm just about ready to get up and go back to what other important things I was doing on that Saturday afternoon when everything on the screen changes. And here come trickles of water, and they are wandering down these cracked creek beds, and soon they are swelling into the streams and going into these rivers that had been dry for years, it turns out. And then the next thing that we see is this fresh, sweet water that is just tracing contours of the delta that you couldn't see without the water there. And just fanning out over this immense area, and it's all turning green in front of our eyes. and there's life that is coming back into this place. And it's sweet water. So as the streams are deepening and rising, and this delta is morphing into this paradise, we see in front of us the grass is growing, the fish moving up into the stream beds, and then the hippos. If you ever wondered if there was a place for everybody in the church, the hippos are ultimately important in this delta because as they walk through the marshes, they leave canals. And if they didn't have the canals, the fish couldn't even get in and out and around and move. The grasses are so dense. I love that image. When you pan out, you see these marshes. The green is like greens of spring. Anywhere that has a change of season. They're that vibrant. All right, let's see if we can. So you're going to see in this one a short recap of the desert part, and then this morphing. Can we get that on full screen as we start? Is there a way to hit the lights? Yes. It should be good to go. right, that's the vision I want my local church to have of itself. That's the image that I want the people of my congregation to have in their minds and the back of their eyes and streaming through their blood, so that they realize that no matter how almost dead we are in desert and wilderness and cannot seem to dig our way out, God willing and providing, this is what a desert looks like when it comes in contact with living water. This is what I want to have flowing from the pulpit on Sunday morning and the worship spaces. I want the Word so alive and the images so brilliant that it comes trickling down the steps of the chancel and runs in rivulets around our ankles and moves down the aisles and along the floor and out the narthex doors, seeps under the closed outer doors in both directions that they exit, and goes down the sidewalk and across the grass and out into the community with all of this green coming along with it. This is the life and the vitality that I want from my local church, because we are living in the Kalahari in a lot of ways. And this is the vision and the image and the promise reclaimed that I want for every congregation or part of the congregation that is experiencing that sense of almost beyond the edge of keeping life together. So here I am. The other thing that has come to me as I have worked with Beam for this event is that indeed I have faith running through my veins that keeps circulating. In spite of my own personal thirsty deserts and longings, and in spite of our feeble knees and fearful hearts that I see in our own congregation, and I suspect are in other congregations, still I have this faith that keeps circulating in my veins. What can I say? The renewing, never-failing God actually transfuses me. You know, there's absolutely no accounting for God's mysterious movement. And I suspect that's why all of you are here. I suspect you didn't have to be dragged to come because you're energized by even a theme about energizing. And I believe that you believe, or at least want to believe, that Isaiah's promise to the exiled Jews in Babylon also acts as prophetic promise to us. Right here, right now, February 2013, on in from here. And here is that prophetic promise again, that waters will break forth in the wilderness, that streams can overtake desert, whatever those wildernesses and deserts particular to our own settings are. And I'm reclaiming that promise by active faith, that indeed God does provide and will provide again. So I'm going to put before you about 4 conceptual, what I'm calling conceptual sources for energizing the streams of faith. Think of where the flood came from, you know, the one that we saw in the Delta. Those originate with rain clouds. So consider these kind of like the rain clouds at the conceptual level for getting this infusion of new life going. And I'm going to suggest, using kind of a metaphor on steroids approach, what gets in the way of those streams as they are present and trying to make their way into our congregational lives. And after I've done that, we'll see where they take us and what we want to ask of them, both the conceptualizations and also the potential blockages. And if we don't get to do that this morning, well, we can try that sometime later today or this evening. So for those of you who like to take notes, no, I don't have a PowerPoint. I will read slowly. I'm going to go right through these 4 and then go back and say just a couple of things and then go on to the next. So here are conceptual sources for energizing streams of faith. And I can get out here and walk among you because I think I can hold a paper and walk and talk at the same time. All right, so the first one is change can happen when people believe it can. Oh, I'm going to drive the filmer crazy. Am I in frame? Okay. Change can happen when people believe it can happen, and here's the big and if they believe the effort is worth it. I almost heard an amen. Yeah. So that's the first conceptual source for energizing streams of faith. Acknowledging that and not running from it, but also making it one of those bars that we have to raise if we're going to make some progress. Change can happen when people believe it can, and if they believe the effort is worth it. Okay, I lied. I'm going to say something about it right now. So here are a couple of questions that popped into my mind, but I would encourage you to invest a few minutes at some point and come up with a couple of basic questions that you would put before others in your setting in order to get some discussion around this particular piece. Okay, so one of the basic questions was, do you believe it, whatever the it is, can happen? I mean, if we're going to make change, there's something we want to make change to or with. So do you believe that it can happen? Do you believe the effort to make the change is worth it? I mean, if we can't start with those basic questions, then we're going to dance all the way around them the whole time. And that dance gets real boring after a while. And as my mother would say, it gets you going no place real fast. All right, and then here are a couple of other questions that popped into my mind. When you really get down to the nitty-gritty here, and we have to do that once in a while. Is being a disciple of Jesus Christ worth the effort? And then, is being the body of Christ worth the effort? All right, the second conceptual source for energizing streams of faith that I want to offer you is that we can gain an awful lot from voices beyond ourselves. And by beyond ourselves, I mean voices that are perhaps in the public media, in novels, that are exploring different types of things that don't have like theology in the title, or biblical studies, or confirmation. Let me see, what else do we tend to read? Sunday school, yes, the materials for the church school. Although if you really read the stuff that was done well, you'd get a lot out of it. I'm just saying. So I want to give you an example of a place that I am getting some real great inspiration because it's providing fresh perspectives, useful language sets. We get all tangled up in a very limited language set within the church. And people outside of the church, or who don't make the church their profession, often have these wonderful language sets out of their own disciplines that can be extremely helpful. And they also provide real-world examples in some of these other sources. So the one of them that I've been tapping into a lot is Krista Tippett's On Being. Anyone familiar here with that? Okay, if you aren't, then please try it out. Krista Tippett spoke at General Synod Hartford, I think, and she's wonderful. She is on par with Bill Moyer in her quality. And she has an interviewing style that I could listen to over and over again because she is so present. And the folks that she's interviewing
accept the responsibility and invitation to be totally present with her in that interview. So these are actual conversations, not sound bites. Used to be called, what did you say? Speaking of Faith. Thank you, Speaking of Faith. It's on being, if you don't get it through your CPR, that's your Colorado Public Radio, you can look for it online under NPR and find it. Anyway, a week ago, I tuned in and was listening to her interview with Seth Godin. I have no idea who Seth Godin is. I had to Google him. Turns out he's an entrepreneur in the internet sphere and has done all of these amazing things and has all kinds of books out. But anyway, she was interviewing him, and he had some very interesting things to tell us. One of them, she asked about his spiritual childhood, and he talked about how his parents had been very committed to reaching out to others. They took their community responsibility seriously. He said he grew up in a home with not a lot of religion, but a lot of faith. And it was faith in things like faith in education, faith in building community connections, faith in responding to need. And I thought, wow, I've heard those before. This is really cool. And so we get this insight from someone who does not live and eat and breathe in our particular world of the church, but has been raised in a family that lived out what we are often trying to live out, and sometimes falling short of, just in the manner in which they live. So think about this other conceptual source, the idea of voices from beyond ourselves. And as I said, you can find it in radio, you can find it good radio, you can find them in good books, even find some things in some not so good books. But look for the things in the outside, in the voices beyond ourselves. The third conceptual source for energizing streams of faith, I want to suggest, is actually Seth Godin's redefining of marketing. And in a moment, I'm going to dig out the piece that I have from that interview. I thought the interview was so rich that I not only listened to it a second time, I downloaded and printed the transcript. And all of that stuff is available. So he's talking about redefining marketing. And as I read this to you, I'll try not to be really boring. I want you to think about syncing it up with the church's current narrative about who we are and why we exist. And then also think about raising the bar on ourselves. Are you watching my pictures? Okay.
It's complimenting what you're saying.
Oh, good. Nice on the back of my neck. So give me a moment while I put my hands on that particular piece of paper here. Ah, there it is. It was really tiny print. Okay, so Krista Tippett is interviewing him, and here's what she wants to ask him. Okay, so she says about, he's redefining marketing as telling an authentic story. Telling an authentic story and having it resonate with the other, with someone. And all the other stuff is just advertising. And so Krista gets him to the point where he's responding about the positive change to this redefining of marketing, and says that instead of networking your way to the top and spamming people and lying, right, but instead doing the more positive thing, this kind of marketing involves weaving a story and weaving a tribe and weaving a network that means something and doing work that matters. And then she lifts up 4 questions that he offers for us to answer. So things to consider as we think about our own selves. and our churches. Who is your next customer? Now this is Krista Tippett's voice. Okay, so who's your next customer? You mean that conceptually. Their outlook, hopes, dreams, needs, and wants. That's our entry point with other people. What are their hopes, their outlooks, their dreams, their needs, their wants? The second question she asks that he has said is, what is the story? This is the next question. What is the story that person has told about himself or herself before he or she met you? So what's their self-story? The third question then. Oh, I have time out for baby talk. We honor children, right? The third one is, how do you encounter him or her in a way that he trusts the story you want to tell her about what you have to offer? How do we encounter the person in a way that that person trusts the story we want to tell them about what we have to offer? And then the fourth question, what changes are you trying to make in him, his life, his story, her life, her story? How many times do we not think about what our real motive is when we're talking with someone, that we are after making a change in them? So what changes are you trying to make in this person, this person's life, this person's story? And then Krista says to Seth, and you start with this before you spend time on tactics, technology, and scalability. I think that's really refreshing. Look at the human dynamic in this. This is not selling bling or getting you to buy something you don't need or overcharging on your credit card. And you can go ahead and turn those into metaphorical contexts within the church, too. We have this great program. We love all our numbers. Don't you want to come and be a part of us? But instead, thinking about the story that the person already carries and holds, the story that we have to offer, how we build trust enough that they'll let us tell them their story and we won't be violating them. And then what changes are we really trying to make in that person's story? I find those fascinating. So that's the third conceptual source of energizing streams of faith, and getting this new definition of marketing in our heads, and seeing how that syncs up with really what the Christian narrative is about and what we want to be doing with that narrative. The fourth one then is what I call connections and flourishing. And I'm going to read this, and you're going to think that everybody who's come before me this morning was all the setup for this one line. So the fourth one is connections and flourishing. If people can offer us connection and meaning and a place where we can be our best selves, yes, we will seek that out. If people can offer us connection and meaning and a place where we can be our best selves, you betcha we will seek that out. Okay, I never taught this long in one class. I'm going to give you a chance to just chat among yourselves for a few moments. I suggest you count at least to 15 before the first person starts talking. That will be the extrovert in your group. That will be okay, but it will give you non-extroverts a few moments just to transfer from the fact that she's not talking anymore to, okay, I can think about this. There's nothing to solve here. There's no question to solve. Just let some conversation flow if it comes naturally, and I'll come back to you in about 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. So, no, you don't have to accomplish anything. Just be with it.